Good morning, and welcome to A Glimpse of the Feminine. I'm your host, Tracy, and we're back for another week. I'm always somewhat amazed that I'm managing to stay consistent with this. This is a big deal for me. Let's see. It's spring, finally, maybe. We've had a few beautiful days. The sun is shining. It's warm out, and today it's raining. So, yep, it's spring. Parent-teacher conferences are coming up, and spring break, and kids are all excited about they actually get more than a week off because of the parent-teacher conferences. They don't have school Thursday or Friday, and then all next week off for spring break. So we're looking forward to just having some downtime and getting to do some fun things that we don't normally get to do. Next week, we are going to start our book club. The first book we're going to read is From Genesis to Junia by Preston Sprinkle. And I'm going to take some time at the beginning of next week's episode to really introduce the book. And then my plan is the first episode of the month, I'm going to do a little introduction on whichever book we're reading. And then the last episode of the month is going to be more in-depth, going through and talking about the book. Eventually, when I'm set up to have guests, I would really, really like to have the authors on and have a conversation about the book, but also about them and how they came to be authors and all that kind of stuff. And I have some friends who are authors, so I'm really hoping to incorporate their books into the book club. But I'm putting their books off a little bit till I'm ready for guests, because I really would love to sit down with my friends and talk about their books. So I've been thinking a lot lately about being humble and kind and apologies. And of course, humble and kind makes me think of Tim McGraw's song. And the chorus to that says, hold the door open, say please, say thank you. Don't steal, don't cheat, and don't lie. I know you got mountains to climb, but always be humble and kind. When the dreams you're dreaming come to you, when the work you put in is realized, let yourself feel the pride, but always stay humble and kind. There have been several different things that have brought this to the forefront for me. And I mean, really, it's kind of a continuation of things we've talked about previously. But always, the church is at the forefront for me, and what the behaviors of Christians in general, but specifically leadership, how their behavior and attitudes affect how people see not only the church, but God. And it just seems like we see so much, I know we've seen within our own church, where the leadership is, what do I want to say? Arrogant and stiff-necked. There is a real problem with leadership that does not educate themselves and who secondarily abuse people who come to them for help. And I know of one instance where a parishioner told the elder that they were secondarily abusing people that come to them for help, and the elder laughed at them. That's kind of arrogant. Church leadership, people turn to the church for guidance and for help. And so I've known people who started going to church because they needed help. And then, of course, the people who are there because they are believers and they want to be part of a church body. They want to be part of that community. And then they need help. So they go to the elders and they talk to them and let them know what's going on. And then they're abused all over again in a different way by the elders, because the elders don't understand what trauma looks like. They don't understand how trauma affects the brain, which in turn affects how people behave, the choices they make, the actions they take, the words they say. Trauma messes things up in a big way. And so, it's my personal opinion that if you're going to be an elder or a deacon or in church leadership in any way where somebody might be coming to you and asking for help, you have a responsibility to learn about trauma. And it's not that hard. When I first learned that I was suffering from depression and anxiety, I started doing a bunch of research. And came to realize, sorry, I almost said come. I came to realize that I had spent most of my adult life living in trauma response. So a lot of my interactions with people were over the top, like something simple and stupid and silly would upset and anger me disproportionately. And like I knew that it was disproportionate, but I didn't understand why. And I didn't know how to change it. Back then, there wasn't the awareness of trauma that there is now. There wasn't the access to counseling or therapy that there is now. But once I began to learn, then I wanted to educate myself so I could understand me better. But not only that, so I could understand and maybe help somebody else out. I've spent a lot of time just reading, but also I've gone to a few seminars. A few hours, really, of sitting under teaching that helps me to be trauma informed. None of it costs very much money, and really not very much time. An hour here, an hour there, an hour. You know, it's not hard to learn about trauma. They have a responsibility. Women who are being abused by their husbands often go to church leadership. Those women are traumatized. So you may say to an abused woman, you need to get out of that situation. And they may agree with you, but they may not be able to do it because they're traumatized. Which, if you don't understand that, can lead you to a point of frustration and then an unwillingness to continue helping. So there's church leadership that has been informed that they have re-traumatized or secondarily abused people. And instead of going, oh my gosh, that was not my intention, apologizing, doing what they can to repair the situation if it can be. Sometimes all you can do is just start from where you're at and move forward in a more positive way. But they don't do that. They just continue on in their way. They haven't done anything wrong. Or they might apologize, but they don't change anything. And Christians are supposed to repent when they sin. And repenting means turning away from, changing direction. When sometimes we cause harm without realizing it. But when it's brought to our attention, then we have a responsibility to do something about it and to change what we do. And I'm not saying that's easy by any means. I have spent the last 6 or 7 years learning about how to be in relationship in a more healthy way. I still screw it up all the time. An old dog can learn new tricks. It just takes a while. But I do try to always go back and apologize when I mess it up. I'm still learning. None of us are ever perfect and ever do everything perfectly. That's not attainable. However, hopefully we get better. Hopefully we aren't doing it as often. The other things that have kind of brought this humble and kind and apologizing up to the forefront for me has been my kids. We've had a couple incidences. One of my boys got into it with a schoolmate, said some things, hurt some feelings, and managed to not get suspended by the skin of his teeth. But we had some good conversation about apologizing. And when we apologize, how do we do that? The example that's been set before them by some adults in their life have been, well, I'm really sorry you feel that way. I'm really sorry you took it that way. Just to be clear, that's not an apology. When we apologize, we own our actions. We own what we said. We own what we did. We don't blame the other person. And sometimes we might give an explanation, not as an excuse, but as an explanation. Um, and that, I think, is a personality thing. I am trying to overcome that. I've always been that way, and I think part of it is I just always felt like I had to explain my actions growing up, and that stuck with me as an adult. And I might say, I am really sorry I overreacted. I shouldn't have yelled. I am still learning. I've spent so much of my life in trauma response, but I'm still learning. And some people take that as an excuse. And it's not. It's not an excuse. For myself, I'm trying to recognize that I am making some improvement, but it explains why. It doesn't excuse the behavior, but it might explain the behavior. So this particular son had heard the other student say something, and so then he started it, and it just snowballed. And of course, because the other student got really upset, he was the one that was in trouble. I'm not excusing what he did at all. But I keep telling the kids, don't respond, because the person that is the responder is almost always the one that actually ends up in trouble. That's just like, I can't think of the, it's just the way it is. My brain stopped. I can't think of the term I wanted to use. So we talked about apologizing, because the principal wanted an apology to happen, and I was in complete agreement. And I told him, you can say, I heard you say this, and I responded poorly. You can't say, well, you started it, because that's blaming them. But to say, I heard it when you said this, that's just recognizing that they do have some culpability in the whole situation, not in his response at all. But he needed to own what he said and how it affected that other student. And I said, if that's not what you intended, that what ended up happening, if that's not what you intended, you can say, it was never my intention to upset you that much. But it's a learning thing, right? I keep telling them, you guys want to learn this when you're teenagers, because it's so much easier than learning it when you're almost 50. And then this week, my youngest, who is a sweetheart, very loving, very kind. And I got a call from the principal that he had said some things that were very unacceptable, and he was going to get a suspension, which again, I was in complete agreement with. And the principal said, I don't this is so out of character. I don't understand. At first I didn't believe it, but there was a corroboration from another student. And I said, that doesn't sound like him. If he said something like that, it was provoked. I'm certain. I'm not excusing what he said, but but I don't think he would just say that unprovoked. And so when I talked to him, he said, well, I was just kind of joking, and that student wasn't respecting another student's boundaries. Which, can I just say, I'm really proud of my son for understanding, or at least beginning to understand, what boundaries are and wanting boundaries respected. But we had to have a conversation about the words we use and being mindful of how somebody else might take it. People do not always hear us in a way that we intend. Their perception of what we say or do may be completely different from what our actual intention was. And so we have to apologize. Even if we don't think we've done anything wrong, if relationship is what is important to us, then we need to clean up the mess we made. And that pretty much always entails starting with an apology. I was able to share with him an incident that happened many, many years ago. We were having, I think it was a Valentine dinner at our church. And the youth group was doing the serving. So we had set aside a table for the youth group to sit at, so that if they were getting up and down, like, they weren't disturbing everybody that was there for the Valentine dinner. And some people came that were friends of some people that went to our church. They were not from the area. They were visiting, and so they came to the Valentine banquet. And when they walked in, they started to sit at the table that we had set aside for the youth group. And I tend to be somewhat smart alecky, and especially if I'm a little bit uncomfortable in what I need to say to somebody. And but we had set that table aside for these groups. So I was like, hey, you can't sit there. And it may have been a little bit different than that. It's been a long time ago. I don't remember exactly, but I know I was just kind of being smart alecky and telling them they couldn't sit there. And I thought I did it in a lighthearted way as well. They were extremely offended. And I was shocked that they would be so offended at what I saw as a lighthearted, if smart alecky kind of interaction. I couldn't just go to them and apologize because they didn't live locally. So I got their address from their friends that went to church with us, and I wrote a letter of apology. Because it was important that their perception of church and God was not negatively affected by me. Temporarily it was, but I'm hoping, I never heard from them, so I don't know, but I'm hoping that my apology changed how they saw things. Like, yeah, that person messed up, but they were willing to own it and to apologize and to try to make things right. But it's really hard to apologize if we're not humble, right? Now I think, at the time, I wasn't very happy about it. I mean, I was more than willing to apologize, but I felt so bad that I had so negatively impacted these people, even though it was completely unintentional. And I wasn't quite sure how you could get that offended over some, like, it really, really bothered me that I would have offended them so badly. But now I think, boy, I'm glad I have some of these life experiences, because when I sit down with my kids and talk to them about the need to apologize, I can let them know with some very real, tangible stories. Like, it's okay. You're not a horrible person because you've offended somebody or you made somebody feel bad. We all do it. It's kind of part of being human. And even as an adult, I still do it. But I apologize. I think it's so important to set that example for our kids and just have conversations with them, not lectures. When I sat down with my youngest to talk about what had happened, he ended up in tears. He felt so bad. I'm sure part of it was he felt bad he was in trouble, but he felt bad for upsetting the other students so much because they're friends. But even if they weren't, I think he would have reacted the same, because he just has a tender heart. He's just a sweet kid. And I do have his permission to talk about this. I said, I would like to, like, I'm not going to give specifics, but I would like to use what's happened. I would like to talk about it on the podcast, if you're okay with that. You have a right to privacy, and you don't have to agree to let me talk about it. And he said, I don't care. So, and I told him, you're not, like, obviously you're in trouble. There are consequences to our actions. And sometimes they're unintended. So you have a consequence to your words and actions. But you're not in trouble, because these things happen. We say things without thinking. Sometimes we do things without thinking. Sometimes we do stuff and don't think it's going to be, maybe that falls under not thinking. But when those consequences are different than what we thought was going to happen, we apologize and we move forward. And he wanted to, like, the next day he was like, and I'm like, well, you can't, because you're suspended, so you can't be at the school. But he wanted to apologize immediately. When I sat down to talk with him, he said, I'm going to apologize when I get to school. And I said, but you can't, because you're not going to be in school. Not until this day. Then you can apologize. And even though he didn't request it, I would like you to go talk to your principal and just have a conversation with him. So I hope I'm setting an example for my kids. When I do things that I know end up hurting their feelings or upset them, I apologize to them. And when they need to apologize, we have conversations about what an apology looks like. Excuse me. And how we go about apologizing. That humbleness, the willingness to apologize, that's all part of being kind. And one of my kids will say, I just don't understand. I don't understand this or I don't understand that. That's okay. We don't have to understand to be kind. And if we're truly kind, we're probably humble. And if we're kind and humble, we'll be willing to apologize. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what our status is. Or am I a leader in a church? Am I Jane Doe in the pew? Am I a coworker? Am I a parent? Am I a child? Am I a friend? It doesn't matter. I should always want to be humble and kind and be willing to clean up the messes I make with people. Again, I don't do it perfectly. Far from it. Ask my kids. Ask my kids on a day when I'm doing pretty good. On a bad day, please don't ask my kids because, and not in my behavior towards them, but just like, yeah, I'm doing pretty good right now. You know, there are days that we can take criticism, and there are days that criticism hits really hard. How do we treat other people? How do we want to be treated? Golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I know when I'm hurt or upset, I appreciate an apology. Be humble. Be kind. Clean up your messes. Hold the door. Say please and say thank you. Don't steal, don't cheat, and don't lie. I know you've got mountains to climb, but always stay humble and kind. When the dreams you're dreaming come to you, when the work you put in is realized, let yourself feel the pride, but always stay humble and kind. Don't forget to comment. Questions, input, episode topic suggestions, all those things are welcome. And as a beginning podcaster, it is kind of actually exciting to see a comment. So please comment and like and share wherever you listen to the podcast. And if you're on YouTube, please subscribe to my channel. I'm told that it helps the algorithm. I don't understand any of it. I'm just recording and putting stuff out there. And excuse me. But I'm told it helps the algorithm. So if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel, that would be absolutely amazing. And until next time, take care.